You're listening to IceBreakers, the podcast exploring all things Canadian and Eurasian, business, culture, and personalities. The series is produced by CECC, the Canada-Eurasia Chamber of Commerce. We are a nonprofit focusing on trade, investment, and good relations between Canada and the countries of Eurasia. I'm your host, Nathan Hunt, one of the founders of CECC and former chairman of the National Board. I invite you to tune in regularly for valuable insights related to the region. Hello, everybody. We're joined today by Eldor Mannopov, graduate from Durham University in the UK with a master's degree in international commercial and trade law. He is managing partner at Dentons in Uzbekistan and well regarded for his leading role on cross-border M&A transactions and investments, as well as acting for international clients, establishing their Uzbek operations. In addition to his legal practice, he is a senior lecturer and course leader with the law faculty at Westminster International University in Tashkent, and he was recently appointed honorary consul of Canada in the Republic of Uzbekistan. I believe that was in 2017. And has been leading the Consulate of Canada in Tashkent since that time. Good morning, Eldor.
Good morning, good evening, Nathan. Nice to see you.
Good evening, your time, yes. Quite a time difference. What can you tell us about your background? Why, did you choose to be a lawyer? Did that profession choose you? How is it you became a lawyer?
Actually, at high school, I studied science, and I was planning to become doctor. So I took courses to biology, chemistry, and I kind of prepared for a medical exam.
So you were actually considering an honorable profession, is what you meant to say.
Yeah, which is more useful. But when it was like a few weeks left before exam dates, my aunt said, Eldor, why you want to spend like 9 years of your life, before you qualify? Go something which earns more money. And at that time, to become lawyer, I think it was like quite fashionable. I said, okay, why not? I sat exam and I got scholarship. So I entered the University of World Economy and Diplomacy. 97, it was international law course. That's how I started.
That was in Uzbekistan.
Yeah, that was in Uzbekistan. And that university was established soon after independence. And that university during Soviet time was Partiyная Shkola. So that was a special school for training party leaders. And after independence, it was transformed into university where they taught international law, international relations, and international economic relations. So I was privileged to enter that university.
And how did you get your gig with Durham University? How did you manage to leave to the UK? How did you get connected with them?
So my luck did not end there. And in 99, 2 years at the end of my second year, I applied to a presidential scholarship. I won the scholarship. There was big competition. I was one out of 36 candidates. And there was a presidential fund called UMID, which stands for Hope. So I got that scholarship and then entered Durham University, and I studied my undergraduate degree there.
You got a presidential scholarship, 1 out of 36 applicants. That's impressive.
Yeah, I was lucky, as I said.
Lucky or maybe smart, maybe both.
Yeah.
Good for you. And what years? Help me with the years. What years were you in the UK?
So I did my undergraduate 99 to 2002. And then I came back to Uzbekistan. I worked for 1 year and then went back, got married, went back, and then did my master's and came back 2004. And since then, I'm here.
And you started your own law firm, I think. Am I right? In 2004 or 2005?
No, 2008, early 2008.
Okay. And at what point did you get hooked up with one of the largest, or isn't it the largest international law firm in the world?
Yes, currently it is the largest international law firm in the world. And we started this conversation in 2016, March. And by the time we kind of merged, it was June 2017. So it took about more than a year.
Well, congratulations on that. We have a long and illustrious relationship with Dentons, and we appreciate the service we get from them, I can tell you. Now, I'm talking about the Moscow office of Dentons. I haven't worked with your branch in Tashkent, but hopefully some of our CECC members will get that opportunity. Now, tell us a little bit about the work you've done. You've been involved in some pretty high level mergers and acquisitions, as I recall. Something involving Coca-Cola.
Yes, probably one of the landmark M&A deals or privatization projects we've been involved as Dentons in the past year or so was privatization of Coca-Cola. And of course, I assume for many of our listeners in Canada, probably it will sound very odd to see that Coca-Cola is privatized. But actually, in Uzbekistan, until relatively recently, majority stake in Coca-Cola bottlers were owned by the government.
Really? How on earth did that come about? I guess Coca-Cola decided that was the most efficient way to enter the market, huh?
Well, I think no. Coca-Cola, I think, entered as a private with private partners, and their shares were at some point nationalized, and it has a certain history with previous, let's say, president's family. That's all in the past, and then the government decided to privatize it, and this was successfully completed in 2021.
Nationalization is a dirty word in Canada, so be careful.
Sometimes happens.
And I'm going to be provocative now and return to a very I would say dark era in relations between Uzbekistan and the West when Newmont Gold, this was 25 years ago, was nationalized, or they had their license revoked, or something bad happened in the 1990s, and that cast a pall on relations between Uzbekistan and the rest of the world for a long time. What happened then, and what has changed in the country now that things are different?
Well, I think, as you said, this has happened 25 years ago. 25 years ago, it would be very difficult to find people who would speak English, let alone to have history or experience of operating under free market conditions. So Uzbekistan was part of Soviet Union, and many decisions were taken in Moscow. So the economy was planned. The whole process, basically, everything negative you can think of the communist regime, right? So when the country became independent, of course, with good intentions, they opened the market and then they entered into agreements. And I assume that at some point, maybe agreement was not ideal, or maybe one-sided, or the government felt it was not comfortable with its terms or how it's implemented, and they got out of the deal. My understanding is if the state wants to terminate, it will terminate one way or another, and may not be always pleasant experience, but that's something which happens.
It's interesting that the American Chamber of Commerce, at a visit, CECC had a delegation there about 10 years ago with Ambassador John Kur at the time. And the U.S. Chamber of Commerce told us that both parties were at fault, that it wasn't a simple nationalization, that the Western partner and the Uzbekistani partner
Exactly.
failed to come to an agreement.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about what's happening now, because Uzbekistan is one of the most, if not the most, vibrant, highly developing and attractive markets in Central Asia today. What has happened? What has changed? What happened in 2017?
The change happened from end of 2016. So our first president, he passed away in September 2016. And then Prime Minister, he took office on interim basis, and he ran for presidency, and he was elected as the new president December 2016.
We're talking about Mr. Merziyoyev.
Yes, President Merziyoyev, Shavkat Merziyoyev. So he got into office in December 2016, and that's when all these major reforms started in full swing. And actually, he started even before election. And we have to remember that President Mirziyoyev at that time was prime minister, but he was had very low profile, and you would never hear or see him in public that much. But looking backwards, we can see that he was taking a lot of notes during his prime minister term, and what he did been doing so far, trying to systematically resolve those stumbling blocks which he has seen during his term as prime minister. Major reforms were to do with conversion of our currency. So since 2017, Uzbek Sum is freely convertible to hard currency. So that resolved problems for investors, foreign companies trying to expatriate their dividends, or also helped with cross-border transactions. So it's much easier to convert. Now it's no problem to convert SUM to dollars or euros to do export or import operations. As long as you have money, you can freely engage in cross-border
Now,
trade.
I'm going to interrupt you because I remember trying to do deals in Uzbekistan in the early 2010s, and we'd have a good or some machinery that the Uzbeki side wanted. They were happy to pay for it, but they didn't have any money. They said, all we have is SUMs, and it's not convertible, so we'll give you cotton instead, or we'll give you some dried fruits instead. And all you could do was barter. I remember being frustrated because we had, a price, an equipment, and a buyer, a seller. Everything was in place. There was simply no payment mechanism, in spite of the fact that the buyer did have money, but they couldn't convert it.
Yeah, so they couldn't convert, and obviously because of artificial prohibition, you had like three different levels of conversion rate. You had official rate, you had so-called bazaar or market rate, and then you had rate at so-called commodity markets. So official rate would be $1 4,000 sum. In bazaar, it will be $1 8,000 sum, and then in commodity exchange market, $1 12,000 sum. So it's three times. So that was a major blockage for trade, and a lot of gray schemes were kind of crafted by business people.
Well, I can tell you, I much prefer payment in US dollars to payment in dried fruits. As much as I love dried fruits, don't get me wrong.
Well, I think today there's no problem with that.
That's good to hear. Good to hear. I will also tell you, anybody who traveled to Uzbekistan back then, 10 years ago, remembers carrying around sackfuls of money, literally sackfuls of money. If you wanted to pay for your hotel in Sums, you had to bring a sack with maybe 28 or 30 or 40 packs, rubber banded packs of Sums, and people would carry those sacks around with them to pay for to pay for more or less expensive things. What was going on then, and how has that changed now?
Well, I think at that time they did not print higher denomination paper money because maybe they were trying to conceal true rates of inflation. And I think fundamental problem was that all decisions were taken by one person, and people didn't want to bring him bad news, and everybody was suffering from having to carry all these kilos of money, because it's a headache to count. Imagine how much time you would spend to count 1 million sum. It's a 5 note, or I don't know, small banknotes.
Yeah. You have to have a strong back to carry all that money.
Yes, and then a lot of time to count. And by hand, and this is another monetary policy was reformed, and we have big denominated currency, so it's not issue anymore. And why it's not issue anymore? Actually, not only because of the paper money, but also, or cash money. At the time, there was also difference between cash money and money on your card. So can you imagine, one sum cash was more valuable than one sum on your bank card, and then you it's like 20% difference. And of course, people were very much encouraged to keep money in cash because of that difference, because you could not freely use your cards. Bank shops would not accept your card, etc., etc. A lot of corruption. And in the new term, this is also resolved. So now people actually prefer to keep their money in bank account in cards rather than carry cash, because it's safer.
Yeah, it is.
Well, in Canada, probably they take it for granted, but these kind of things can be quite important.
Quite important. I can remember paying for a conference that we ordered with a suitcase full of money. We had to bring literally a suitcase full of money to pay for the conference, pay the organizer.
Exactly.
But anyway, tell us about some of the reforms. I mean, you rattled off a list of about 20 things that I wrote down that impressed me that the new government is doing. What has changed? What are some of these reforms?
So currency reform we mentioned. Second is tax reform. This was a major reform in relation to taxation. So the government passed a new tax code whereby effective tax rates have been reduced. For example, VAT has been reduced from 20% to 15%, and it's expected that it will be further reduced next year, maybe to 13%. One and second, VAT chain now works as it's supposed to work. In the past, it didn't work properly. Companies don't have problems with repatriating their profits in form of dividend. So the corporate profit tax in Uzbekistan is about 15%. Dividend tax is 10%.
That's very low. That's very low. Now, I'm going to interrupt you. You said VAT chain. What you mean is that companies couldn't get their VAT back, right?
Exactly.
And now they can.
Yes.
Quite easily, or is it still a struggle?
Well, I don't say it is kind of so smooth. Of course, there are some problems with paperwork, etc. But it's all done electronically, so it is possible to offset to get back your VAT. So it's not the same type of problem as you would have it like 5 years ago.
Well, that's refreshing to hear. Great to hear. Now, you said taxes are down. Corporate income tax is down to what, 15%, you said?
15%, yeah.
Very low. And what is personal income tax at?
Well, another tax which has been reduced is 12 personal income tax. Now it's 12%. Used to be 24%. Now it is flat 12%. And then social tax was 25%. I think now it is also 12% for private companies. So the tax on payroll is quite competitive, and therefore businesses are very much encouraged to pay salaries officially, so that people entitled for their pensions, etc. So overall tax regime has become more stable, transparent, understandable. And now public companies and state-owned companies gradually are being required to do their bookkeeping in line with international financial reporting standards. So the government is requiring them to do their accounting in line with international standards, I think, which is also quite helpful in medium term.
Well, that is helpful. IFRS is something that even many Russian companies don't have yet, and that will be a wonderful change if it becomes quite common in Uzbekistan. I can tell you. What else can you tell us? I mean, you had a corruption problem, I think. Has that been resolved or reduced, or what's?
Well, I think corruption problem is a still significant problem when it comes to public procurement and public administration, especially when it comes to land rights. I think corruption is still can be major issue. However, one good thing, imagine we've been independent for 30 years, but until this government, we never had the law on public procurement. So the government passed law on public procurement. The government is working on the law relating to civil servants. So many laws have been passed which were never passed in the past. But at least there is a movement in addressing those issues.
I can tell you from personal experience, we were called Serba back then. Serba tried to register a chapter in Uzbekistan, and we had applied, and it was taking us a long time. We had some sticking points, and we had a large delegation coming to Uzbekistan in May, I want to say, of 2019. And we really asked the government if there's something that can be done to please speed up our application process. And lo and behold, the day before the delegation arrived, we got the note from the ministry that you are officially open. Your chapter is registered. Serba is now an official functioning legal entity in Uzbekistan. So we were pretty pleased with the service we got from our government handlers at that point.
Well, actually, establishing business in Uzbekistan is quite simple. If you have all paperwork, it's possible to set up company within 1 day now. And talking about corruption, the government recognizes that, and what the government has been doing is to implement so-called e-government, so that many public services are provided online with minimum human interface as possible. So the government passed law regulation, first of all, listing the list of there could be some services which you didn't even know existed. So the government then said, let's do inventory of what kind of services we actually provide. And then once we know this inventory, let's see which one of these are licenses, permits, which have to be canceled and which can be done online. So, and government working in that direction. So now many services are provided online. So, for example, certain licenses to obtain, you cannot do on in person anymore. You have to file applications electronically. Tax filing fully electronic. Filing for a majority of permits and licensing also electronic. So, which makes the idea is to make it cheaper, faster, and fundamentally to reduce corruption.
Well, what you're saying is music to my ears and to our ears collectively, I would say. I've had a love relationship, a love affair with Uzbekistan ever since I first visited the country in 2007. I have a very close Uzbekistani friend, Furkat Adilov, whom I've known for almost 30 years, he and his family. And he showed me Uzbekistan the first time, Samarkand, the beautiful marketplaces of Bukhara, the mountains of Bildirsai, the fabulous museums of Tashkent. But of course, Samarkand sticks in your mind as quite a jewel. Most people don't realize that what we consider Arabian stories like Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves or Aladdin and the Magic Lamp, that all took place in Samarkand. That all took place in Uzbekistan, didn't it? And now you have an economic forum, I believe, in Samarkand coming up. Is that right?
Yeah, I think in September there should be a big meeting of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It's scheduled for September. I don't remember the dates. And then we're expecting the economic forum maybe in November.
November, that late. I had thought earlier. Okay.
I don't know the dates, but maybe earlier, but it's not settled yet, I think.
Well, I can tell you, I'm always looking for an excuse to visit Samarkand. That's one of the most beautiful cities in the world, in my opinion. So this will provide me a nice one. Now, tell me a little bit about the mining climate. Of course, we always say that we're not just a natural resources association, but we are highly focused on natural resources. We have mining companies that are members, as you know. We have some that are active in Uzbekistan. Some, I think you can name names because it's public information. But what can you tell us about the climate for mining companies, foreign mining companies operating in Uzbekistan?
So what we can say about Uzbekistan, I think two largest taxpayers are in mining sector. Nawai Mining Company and Al Malik Mining Company. I think those two behemoths account for most of GDP, I guess, and as definitely biggest taxpayers. So Uzbekistan is rich in mineral resources, gold, uranium, copper, silver, and many, including rare earth metals. And until recently, this industry was predominantly state owned because this is kind of strategic. And we have this concept: if it's strategic, should be owned by state. And these companies, for example, both of these companies, they were foundations for cities. Nawai city or Zarafshan city, Al Malik city. You cannot imagine without these companies. These cities grew and were established around these companies.
We call them factory towns. We have them in Canada as well.
Yeah, factory town, exactly. And therefore, the mining regulatory framework was not so advanced because when it's state owned, there's they were going on inertia based on because they directly accountable to the cabinet of ministers. I think many things were settled directly by the government. But with coming of the new president to power, he wanted to improve efficiency in this area as well. And of course, efficiency means private sector. One of the initiatives which is being implemented is to develop new subsoil law. And I know the government is working on it. Maybe this year or early next year, they're expected to pass the subsoil law. And based on this law, the system will be on license basis. So mining companies, they will have to basically buy license either to develop fields which are already with proven reserves, or if it's a prospective fields without proven reserve, then the government geology committee will run a tender where they can participate, get license on the basis of the auctions. So and now for the past 2 years, I think the geology committees are doing online auctions. So they putting out fields, especially for gold, and I think for gold fields, not very big, for private investors to bid and then develop those fields. And I know that number of auctions being successfully completed, and a lot of small private, let's say junior companies, trying to kind of develop such fields. And also in respect of some types of minerals, government is also doing direct negotiations with foreign companies or licensors to develop other types of minerals. So in that sense, I think I wouldn't say the market is very much open, but it is definitely moving in that direction. Big stumbling block in mining is, I think, to do with taxation. So royalty tax was very high, like 25% or something like that. The government reduced it to 8% or 7%, which is in line with international practice. However, government last year introduced new tax called rent tax, which again may make some projects economically non-feasible. So maybe that's a stumbling block right now, and I think government will change that, because for mining, to enter into mining business, you have to have a very stable tax environment, because the cycle there is quite big. You can't plan for 5 years.
A long term project. You can't have the laws changing every year for sure.
So I think that's so the government working on the new mining law, and I think they're also kind of testing and seeing, trying to find a balanced approach with respect to taxation. I don't say it is balanced or ideal yet, but that's the movement. And another aspect, relating to mining is standards, how you prove reserves, and then, because that's important for financing, as you may appreciate.
Very important.
And I think government understands that they need to introduce recognizing international standards like JORC. So now the government knows, and they understand that these reserves should be approved not only by state reserve committee or whatever, but also independently in line with JORC standards. And I think that there is a movement in that direction.
Well, that will be a welcome reform. It's something that neighboring Kazakhstan has undertaken recently, and I think they've seen great dividends as a result. What Canadian companies are active? I think there's at least are there any junior miners active, or is it all big boys?
Well, as you know, B2 Gold is active. They've been doing exploration for the past couple of years, and
Yeah, we have great respect for them.
yeah, and I think been investing steadily, and I know they have very good cooperation with Geology Committee. I think Geology Committee, they're learning a lot from B2 Gold, and B2 Gold also learning a lot in this market. I'm not aware of other Canadian companies, but what we see Turkish or Chinese investors or developers who have some assets or trying to enter to Uzbek market in mining sector. But as you would expect, when I speak to them, those, let's say, Turkish mining company, they would have some affiliation with Canada. They are listed in Toronto Stock Exchange, or they have a partner in Canada, something like that. So sometimes we see Canadian companies' presence indirectly, let's say.
Yeah, TSX is certainly the place to list if you're in mining. Hope, I don't know if you have any input into this new law, but I would hope there would be some provision for claim staking. That's something that didn't make its way into the original Russian law. And we lobbied hard for 10 years, and finally it was incorporated into the law. The Rosnedra, the Subsoil Commission, eventually lobbied to have a provision included where, if a junior miner comes in and there are no proven reserves, but they do discover something, then they're able to take it over without having to go to tender. And I hope that some similar provision will be included in the Uzbekistani
Yeah,
law when it comes up.
I think it's to do the exclusivity right. You mean, right? In if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that, yeah. I'm speaking over my pay grade. Just so I'm pretending to be an expert in mining, though I'm actually an idiot. So you probably know more than me.
Yeah, well, I'm not a mining lawyer either, but my understanding, the logic in the new law will be that if you have the right for exploration, and then if you carry out exploration, then you will have priority right for production. So if you explore and then find the reserve or whatever, then the government cannot just take away from you and give to some other company for production. So you will have exclusive right for production on that field. And I think that principle it will be firmly embodied in the new law, as I understand.
Conversion of exploration license into production license. That's very important in Russia as well. Very important.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit, some personal stories. I know you met the prior ambassador of Canada in Russia and Uzbekistan and Armenia. That was John Kur, and he was the one, I think, that invited you to become honorary consul. Is that right? Did you have any personal stories with him?
We have, yes, a lot of personal stories when he visited Tashkent, and one of them is when we, visited Hiva for a couple of days. I think this was before end of his term as ambassador.
What a beautiful city that is. What a beautiful city. My wife and I went there for her birthday 4 years ago, and we just had a wonderful time.
Yeah, it is a. So we went to Hiva, and then we took a car to Nukus to visit Savitsky Museum, and then and the museum was, splendid. We very much enjoyed. It is mind blowing to see what you can find there in the middle of desert. So that kind of art objects. And another surprise for us was, to have a fish in the middle of desert.
Fish.
So yeah, so you would not, Uzbekistan being double landlocked country, you usually, people come here and say, oh, this is a place for meat or for plov, shashlik. But actually, in Horizm, Bukhara, they can make a very good fish with sazan. I think it's a carp, right?
A type of carp, yes.
So on the way back from Nukus to Hiva, our driver said, I'll take you a very good place for fish, and we were both like skeptical, come on, is it going to be safe? But then took us to a very nice restaurant, and the fish was superb, it's very nice.
Well, that's nice to hear. Now you've touched on a national tragedy. 65 years ago, there was plenty of fish because you had a teeming supply from the Aral Sea.
Yeah.
But the Aral Sea is no more. Not much left to speak of, anyway. What happened there, and what is being done to ameliorate what remains?
I think Aral Sea, or strategy of Aral Sea, is another what we inherited from Soviet times. It's one of the, let's say, very bad, least to say, practices in Soviet times when you chase after numbers, plans, you want to beat everybody without being very sustainable. I think during Soviet times, then leaders set the goal, 6 million tons of cotton. We want to be ahead of the planet. And the cost of that planning, that we have the major international, environmental disaster. Because I remember in some of the visits, they say, the traces of sand from the bottom of Aral Sea, you can find today in even Arctic. The wind taking these traces even to the North Pole. So that's the impact of this environmental tragedy, unfortunately.
Yeah, the sea was depleted to almost nothing, and there's still a few Finger Lakes left of the sea. But I think they're trying to at least save the land where the sea used to be, to turn the sand into something more fertile. Are they not?
Yes. The government actually is spending a considerable amount of money to plant special trees to keep the sand from moving. And I think they planted, millions of those trees. I don't remember what the size, how many thousands or millions of hectares. But the government has been systematically for the past couple of years planting special trees, and actually it's being quite successful because it is kind of creating a new type of, let's say, ecology there, for as a safe haven for certain types of animals, etc., etc. But trying to preserve what they have and then to mitigate harm from the consequences of drying up of the sea.
So we used to have a sea. 100 years from now, we'll have a nice forest there instead.
Fingers crossed.
I can tell you, I have the greatest respect for the Uzbek people. And I'm going to tell a little story that I shouldn't because it's not related to business. My 86-year-old mother wanted to visit someplace exotic, and she's just about on her last trip. She's now 89, by the way, and she's doing just fine. But she was 86 3 years ago. And I said, well, let's go visit Uzbekistan. For my wife and I, it's one of the favorite countries in the world. We love the place. We have friends there. We went there, and one of the places we went to see was the grave of Saint Daniel, who is an honored saint, as you know, in the Muslim faith, in the Jewish faith, in the Christian faith. All faiths revere Daniel, and his grave is it outside of Samarkand or is it outside of Tashkent? I'm showing my ignorance. I don't remember where we were.
I think it's outside Samarkand.
Okay, so that's where we were. And it closes at 7 o'clock. And we arrived smack dab right at 7 o'clock. And the guy had already locked up. And he said, I'm sorry, I'm on my way home. Can you come back tomorrow? And we said, well, we can't because we're leaving, tomorrow morning on the train. And he looked at his watch and he looked at us. And I said, my 86-year-old mother, really wanted to see the grave. And he said, you know what? We're reopening. He just took the keys and went and reopened for another half hour and let us walk around and touch the grave. And it was just wonderful example, I think, of the selflessness you often see from the Uzbek people. They really appreciate foreigners and tourists, and they try and show their best. They put their best foot forward when people come to visit. I've always felt welcome when I'm in Tashkent. I can tell you that.
Hospitality, I think it's
hospitality is important. Tell us, Eldor, what is it that made you a leader, in your opinion?
Well, I would say it's patience, commitment to goals which I set, and to work I do, and most importantly, to my team.
Good for you. Yeah, the goals-based living is important. I'm trying to institute more of that in my life as well, I can tell you. And tell us about the future. What does the future hold for Eldor Mannopov?
I guess nobody knows, but hope. I hope that dreams and plans we make will be materialized in a way much better than we have or could have ever anticipated.
You're hoping for better times. I have to agree with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Eldor, for your time today. This has been a great little chat. We were joined today by Eldor Mannopov, who is the managing partner of the Dentons law firm, the Dentons practice in Uzbekistan, and he is also honorary consul of Canada in the Republic of Uzbekistan, has been since 2017. So that was a great chat. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to our future contacts.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now. You've been listening to IceBreakers, a podcast produced by CECC, the Canada-Eurasia Chamber of Commerce, supporting trade, investment, and good relations between Canada and the nations of Eurasia. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe to the show and give us a review on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts. You can join our LinkedIn group to address questions to guests. To find out more about the series or to make a donation, please check out our website at www.ceccpodcast.com. Thanks for tuning in.